happening tonight in Vancouver.
And they're very pragmatic, sensible recommendations. And it's a no-brainer to me.
Families are welcoming new recommendations for long-term care improvements from BC's Seniors Advocate, now watching for the province to act.
There will only be a few extremely narrow exceptions, like a valid medical condition.
Vaccines required for air and rail passengers. Ottawa with their announcement, which includes mandatory vaccines for federal public servants by the end of the month.
Just how high could energy prices soar this winter? The global factors poised to push up the cost to heat a home and fill up the tank.
This is City News Everywhere.
There are more recommendations from BC's Seniors Advocate. This comes following a review of COVID-19 outbreaks in BC's long-term care homes.
Her recommendations are fantastic. Now, will we see any changes? Will the government actually do something about it?
After spending months fighting for the right to visit their loved ones in care during COVID-19 lockdowns, some families are having a hard time feeling optimistic.
There was recommendations made in November 2020, and those have still not been implemented.
The 7 new recommendations include expanding sick leave, train more new nurses and care aides, decrease contract direct care staff, increase RNs in private care homes, increase testing, and eliminate shared rooms. In progress already, mandatory vaccinations for staff and booster shots for residents.
It's great to go in knowing that you're well protected, that they're going to get their booster shot, that staff are now going to be all vaccinated.
Proof the province says they have been taking action. That and that thousands of staff have been added since last year. A key recommendation.
That is happening. It's not acting on it, it's happening. On the question of sick leave, my colleague, Labour Minister Hay Baines, is acting as of before January 1st. That's action.
Sick leave, though, is still not equal across all care homes. And the review found homes run entirely by the province had far fewer COVID cases than those contracted by the province to provide care. Dick says the work is far from over, not just with staffing and keeping residents safe.
There is an obligation to improve the quality of life in long-term care.
This is where the minister and families are in complete agreement.
We need her recommendations to be taken seriously. And we've been in this now for 19 months. Let's make the quality of life for the residents in long-term care as quality as it can be.
For City News in Victoria, I'm News 1130's Lisa Eusda.
By the end of October, everyone 12 or older on a plane or train within Canada should be fully vaccinated.
The Prime Minister clamping down on COVID-19 restrictions, targeting Canadian travelers who aren't vaccinated.
There will only be a few extremely narrow exceptions, like a valid medical condition.
Despite the October 30th deadline, there will be a grace period until November 30th, allowing travelers to provide proof of a negative COVID test before traveling via air, rail, or marine. Operators will be in charge of enforcing the rules, but there will be flexibility for travelers in remote and Indigenous communities. The Liberals also announcing another significant change aimed at government workers.
Federal public servants in the core public administration must be fully vaccinated by October 29th. This will apply to those who work in the federal government's various departments, the RCMP, Correctional Services of Canada, the Canada Border Services Agency, and many other offices and agencies.
The new regulation applies to more than 267,000 employees, regardless of whether they work at home or the office. And those who choose not to get their shot will face some dire consequences.
Members of the public service who are not fully vaccinated or do not disclose their vaccination status by October 29th will be placed on administrative leave without pay as early as November 15th.
Employees who are in the process of getting vaccinated will be exempt, but must provide a date for their second dose. They'll be required to sign an attestation confirming their shots, and management will be able to request proof at any time.
Anyone who lies on their attestation will face severe consequences, and there will be verifications done over the following weeks to ensure that everyone is vaccinated.
While Trudeau was focused on vaccines, his recent decision to skip the first Truth and Reconciliation Day in favor of a trip to Tofino caught up with him.
It was a mistake to travel on that day. This is an important moment for Canada and for Canadians to reflect not just on the past, but on the present. I was in error to choose to travel on that day, and I apologize directly to Chief Casimir for not having attended the event that she invited me to.
In Ottawa, Nigel Newlove, City News.
BC Ferries says the mandatory federal COVID-19 vaccination policy announced today for air, train, and marine travel in Canada will not impact its passengers. It says it supports the position of federal and provincial health officers that vaccination is the most effective tool to reduce the risk of COVID-19. But it says its passengers will not be required to provide proof of vaccination at this time because its service is considered to be essential. It's reviewing new regulations requiring marine operators of Canadian vessels with a crew of 12 or more to begin phasing in a mandatory vaccination policy for staff by the end of this month. 792 new cases of COVID-19 in BC today and 9 more deaths. There are now 5,945 active cases across the province. 5 more people were admitted to hospitals due to COVID-19, bringing the total number to 350. Of that total, 136 patients are in intensive care. That's down 8 people since the last update. 88% of eligible adults in BC have now received their first dose of COVID vaccine. Nearly 83% are fully vaccinated. Experts warn gas prices could continue to trend up as the price of crude oil rises to levels we haven't seen in years. West Texas crude jumped to nearly $80 US a barrel this week, and analysts believe we'll start to see the knock-on effects of that at the pump soon. They say on the West Coast, what you pay is usually dependent on the price of crude. Demand is also on the rise, and adding to the cost of gas is OPEC's reluctance to increase production.
Energy prices are soaring across Europe, and the shockwaves are being felt in Canada and around the world.
It is a serious issue. I think we have to be very clear that the gas prices are skyrocketing.
The European Commission president on Wednesday stressing what she calls the importance of investing in renewables to achieve stability, as consumers in the EU and the UK are facing record high gas and electricity prices. The surge partly blamed on a sudden global spike in energy demand as more countries exit COVID lockdowns. Europe is under pressure to retool its energy market. The 27-country EU imports about 90% of its natural gas needs.
It's essential to strengthen Europe's preparedness and resilience to price hikes.
The bloc now calling on member countries to provide relief funds to households and small businesses. Anger over the sharply rising prices building in countries like France. The French finance minister says he expects the climbing costs to last for a few more months.
The cost of pretty much everything related to the energy market is on the rise.
Here at home, 680 News senior business editor Mike Eppel telling Breakfast Television Canadians can expect to be paying more to heat their homes with gas and fill up the tank, with the cost of a liter at or near record highs in many provinces, due in part to supply chain concerns in both North America and Europe, along with energy demands in China. Right now, the price of oil hovering around $80 per barrel.
Remember last year when you couldn't give oil away? It was, at $0 or below that per barrel. Well, now we're seeing the inverse. There is actually panic buying on the market as traders gear up for the winter time and where energy will be coming from.
So where are things headed as we inch closer to winter? The Bank of America saying recently a variety of factors, including some still up in the air like a colder than normal winter, could push the price of a barrel of oil in the coming months above $100 for the first time since 2014. Melissa Duggan, City News.
BC's integrated homicide investigation team has been called out to the Vancouver suburb of Surrey following a deadly shooting. Around Tuesday, 10 p.m. local time, Surrey Mounties responded to reports of a shooting on 122A Street and 80th Avenue. Amongst arrival, They found the victim with multiple gun wounds, where they were later pronounced dead at the scene of the shooting. The intersection of 122A Street between 80th Avenue and 78th was blocked off for the investigation. 3 back-to-back stabbings on Vancouver's downtown east side sent 3 men to the hospital. 2 suffered serious injuries. Just after 1 p.m. Tuesday, officers responded to a social housing complex near Powell and Dunleavy Streets, where a man was found stabbed in the back. He was taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries. Police tracked a 27-year-old suspect to a room inside the apartment, but they were found unresponsive due to a fentanyl overdose, and officers administered naloxone. Then just after 1 a.m., police were called to reports of a 55-year-old man who was stabbed in 3 places near East Hastings and Columbia Streets. That victim was also taken to hospital and is in stable condition, and police are looking for a suspect. Just after an hour later, a man was stabbed several times near Water and Carroll Streets. The 28-year-old was taken to the hospital with serious injuries, and no arrests have been made.
We had 3 stabbings alone, so that in itself is a trend. It's not a trend we like to see. It's very concerning for us. As you know, we have 3 victims here who are still in hospital. Nobody has been released.
Anyone with information about the incidents is asked to call the VPD. A 52-year-old man was randomly attacked by a stranger in Vancouver's West End last month, leaving him with serious injuries to his face. Police say the victim was walking to work near Davie and Howe Streets just after 5 a.m. on September 18th when a man walking in the opposite direction punched him in the face. The victim became disoriented and was unable to stand on his feet. A taxi driver brought the victim to a nearby hospital where he had surgery for a fractured jaw. The attacker is around 5 feet 10 inches and has a husky build with broad shoulders. And at the time of the assault, he was wearing a dark hooded sweater with a dark jacket on top, blue jeans, and a dark mask. Police say there was no crime in a confrontation between Vancouver's mayor and a man who confronted him in a Yaletown wine shop. 3 weeks ago, Kennedy Stewart claimed he was verbally accosted by an aggressive man who ignored his requests to leave him alone. The mayor also said charges were being considered. VPD says it concluded no crime occurred, saying the incident was a spirited discussion and verbal confrontation. The mayor's office says it's, quote, grateful for the work of the VPD in this matter. Vancouver NHL player Evander Kane is being investigated for allegedly faking his proof of vaccination card. He's not taking part in the training camp with the San Jose Sharks. Our sister station, Sportsnet 650, says if this is true, it doesn't feel like they void his contract.
If teams aren't following them, they could lose draft picks, they could be fined heavily, suspensions could be levied to specific players. So if this is in fact to be true, then Evander Kane is going to face some serious punishment, and it's also against the law.
It's illegal in both Canada and the U.S. to fake vaccine cards, and it could cost people heavy fines or tougher punishment.
You're not on vacation, but you're working from home from someone else's home.
Yeah.
The work from home trend may be taking its next turn. Katrin Colt is a sales manager at a company called Growth Genius. She's living in Toronto this month as she explores her company's flexible work location policy.
And we just fully embrace that this is now not just something that you can potentially do. This is a perk. This is something that you should be taking advantage of.
She actually says her employer had this type of policy in effect well before the pandemic started, but since then she's noticing others like her in the workforce, booking short-term rentals and living in vacation-style accommodations, but continuing to work. In this case, she booked this Toronto accommodation using Airbnb.
Now you're on a meeting right now, at least it looks like it. Are your coworkers cool that you're talking to me instead of talking to them?
Yeah, we talked about it in advance. They know that we have a special guest, but so we do all our meetings over Zoom.
Can you show me, kind of take me on a tour of your workspaces out here in the backyard?
Sure, yeah. So, again, jokingly, this is my standing desk here. Otherwise, I have been taking the old laptop and then I'll just kind of chill on the couch here. This is mostly for internal meetings. External meetings have a little bit better posture. Otherwise, I take it inside, and that's where I'm kind of dinner table.
We reached out to both Airbnb and Vrbo for some perspective on how many people are doing something similar. Airbnb telling us trips over 28 days became the fastest growing type of booking on the platform in the second quarter.
That says a lot about just the trend of what's happening in the travel market there, that people are looking to book things for longer periods to do that mix of leisure and travel and business potentially.
At the same time, Michael Holinsky, an assistant prof at Ryerson's Ted Rogers School of Management, says the trend is an interesting way for employees to redefine their work-home boundaries.
For a long time, there's been research to suggest that taking time away from work is valuable, but at the same time, there's also a lot of research to suggest that changing your scenery, changing locations can also be beneficial. That's been primarily studied from a vacation perspective. However, we've known over the past decade, 2 decades, that working outside of your house from another location, like a coffee shop, can provide value because you're creating some separation, not necessarily from your work boundaries, but you're creating separation from your personal home boundaries.
Katrin's so far saying it works for her, and as long as management and staff trust each other, the policy could work in many more workplaces.
You're going to get your work done, you're going to show up on time, you're going to be available.
For City News, I'm David Zura.
It's this feeling of like when you see something so cute.
Corazon Manson is the owner of Gigil Children's Clothing in Vancouver. Gigil is a Filipino word with literally no English translation. Let's just say it equates to that fuzzy feeling when you see something super cute. Manson came up with the idea for her online store featuring photos of Filipino staples on kids' clothing when she couldn't find any children's apparel here in Canada with styles that reflected her Pinoy heritage.
When I had my son Liam, he was the inspiration for it. So he was like this like Michelin, like Siopao, like Pandesal arm baby, like just so like squishy. But he had this big round face with like big bright eyes, and he looked just like a Siopao. And I was like, okay, I need to find a Siopao shirt for him. I need to find something. And so like I was looking on Etsy, I was just looking all over the website, and I couldn't find anything. And I was like, wow, there's like no representation for anything Filipino.
And Siopao, or a Filipino pork bun, is just one design featured on Gigil Clothing's lineup.
The jeepney is like the iconic mode of transportation in Manila.
Other fiesta foods like the Filipino lumpia or deep-fried spring roll is also featured on t-shirts.
So this is one of the first designs that we went out with. And obviously lumpia is just like a staple with like any Filipino party.
And there's a design for a Philippine dessert composed of shaved ice milk and beans.
Halo-halo. Halo-halo is like a must. So
it also wouldn't be a complete lineup without the Philippines' favorite fast food mascot, keeping up with pandemic protocols.
It's a Jollibee with a mask. So it's kind of like a pandemic Jollibee, I guess you could say.
By creating her new children's clothing line, Manson hopes that kids born of Philippine heritage here in Canada will be able to share their culture with others.
Especially as a mom now, I'm like, I want my son to feel seen and want him to feel represented. You know, we're in this time now where we're all embracing our culture and all our differences.
Orders can only be made online for now at gigilclothing.com, but Manson hopes to one day transform her Metro Vancouver warehouse into an actual retail location.
The big dream for me is to eventually have a storefront and also to like have my products carried and just be a wholesaler across North America, and just having Gigil, having the brand known and seen is like where I want to see this business grow.
In Vancouver, I'm Omni Television's Teresa Barrera for City News.
Vancouver's news is always available on the radio with News 1130 or online anytime at citynews1130.com. Our next edition of City News is tonight at 11. Thanks for watching and have a great night.